Hello and welcome to the January 2022 Recreational Astronomy Night Meeting online edition of the RASC Toronto Centre. My name is Paul Markov, coming to you from Markham, Ontario. I hope you had a good holiday break and that you're all in good health. As you've heard me say many times before, I'm always on the lookout for speakers. So if you have a presentation in mind, please get in touch with me. We have openings for the March and later meetings, which are held on the first Wednesday of each month. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to recognize our top-notch technical team comprised of Andrew and Betty Reed, Emma Seabrook, Ward Legros, and Enya Chulucci. Thank you guys for making these online presentations possible for all of us. We have 3 presentations this evening as usual, and I expect will be done around 9:30 this evening. The speakers this evening are Chris Vaughan, and he'll be presenting to us, instead of the sky this month, it'll be the sky this year, things to look forward in 2022. Then we're going to have Claudio Oriani talk to us about automating your telescope with Remote Desktop and N.I.N.A. And finally, Manu Mukerji will tell us about his journey into astrophotography. Tom Luton, our president, will close the meeting as usual with announcements. If you have any questions for our speakers, please enter them in the YouTube chat box, and Emma will ask the speaker the questions on your behalf. And also, if you're attending the meeting for the first time, whether you're a member or not, please say hello through the YouTube chat box. Let's get the meeting started with Chris Vaughan and the sky this year.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I thought it was a great opportunity to have a meeting so early or so young in the year that would cover the lookout to the whole year. So I'm coming to you from Thornhill, Ontario, not too far from Paul. I'm just a few minutes south of the David Dunlap Observatory, actually. So I'm an astronomy mecca, if you like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a number of things that are be coming up in the coming year. I'm going to go rather quickly, but I'll leave, when I get into Stellarium, I'll leave the time and date window shown on the Stellarium screen. So you'll be able to, watch this later on YouTube, pause the video and make your notes if I go a little bit too fast for you. So what I'll do is I'll just run through a couple of highlights. I like to actually share some resources in case you want some additional information about what's going on this year. So the latest issue of Sky News magazine, the January-February issue, has a nice story by Brian Ventrudo about the 10 top events for the year. Nicole Morlaro of CBC recently posted a story called Please Do Look Up, and I've got the link there for that article. And then Alan Dyer, another rascal who lives out west, he also posted recently his best sky sites of 2022. One of the things I liked about Alan's blog is that he covered things like noctilucent clouds and zodiacal light and other phenomenon that we normally don't think of. But when you've got great skies like he does, then you can take advantage of some of those. And of course, I cover a number of the events as we go during the week at my skylights, if anyone's interested. We normally during the sky this month talk a little bit about what the daytime nighttime balance looks like. So I'll just quickly cover the fact that January 5th today, we've got sunset at 4:55, and full darkness after the end of astronomical twilight starts at 6:38. So if you're an imager and you want a nice dark sky, you've got about 11 and a half hours of imaging time. By the time of our next RAN meeting on Feb 2, that'll be, of course, delayed a little bit as the spring starts to get arriving, and you'll be down to 10 hours and 45 minutes of imaging time a month from now. In terms of the moon phenomenon, if you're interested in moonless skies, dark nights without the moon around, the best time for that in this next coming period of time would be the 25th of January to around the 2nd at February. So third quarter to about a couple of days after new moon. If you want to look at the moon itself, though, your best viewing time will be this week, starting tonight and running to about the 15th of the month as the moon waxes fuller in the evening sky. I want to point out that on Sunday night, January 9th, we've got a Lunar X event scheduled to happen. The X is a phenomenon that appears when a certain group of crater rims get illuminated by the sun from a particular angle. And that happens for 2 or 3 hours a number of times a year at the first quarter moon. So that'll be on Sunday, January 9th. It'll start to form around 10 p.m., peak around 11, and then start tapering off. So you've got a window of a couple of hours. I can show you where that is in the sky here in a little bit. Now, a little bit of bad news is that this will probably be, I believe it's the only Lunar X event visible from Toronto in an evening sky, a dark sky, for all of 2022. So you do want to hope for clear skies and get out there and take a look. The night of the Lunar X, you can also look for a little V on the moon, which is a little bit north of the lunar equator. And some people have claimed to see other patterns like L's and E's, and of course the craters are round, so you can make yourself some LOVE on the moon if you want to as well. A really good resource for checking out things like Lunar X's is the NASA Dial-A-Moon page. It gets updated every year, so this year the 2022 edition is up. And what you can do is click on, I'll just bring it up here so you can see it. So this is the Dial-A-Moon page, and what you can put in is the month, the day, and the universal time, and in hour increments, it'll give you what the moon looks like on that hour of the day of the year. So here we have January 10th at 3:0300 UT, and if you subtract 4 hours for Toronto time, then that's 11 p.m. Toronto time. You can see the Lunar X is down here. If I advance this, go back an hour, you can see the X is a little less apparent and so on. So you can play with that and work out exactly when the X is most visible. And if you click on any of these images, then it'll download a high-res image that you can then, with annotations that'll show you the craters and things like that. So let me head back here to Stellarium. There we go. All right, let's get out of here and let's go into Stellarium. So a couple of highlights over the next couple of weeks before I head out into the larger year. We've got the greatest elongation of Mercury happening on Friday this week. So here's Mercury. So Mercury will be at its greatest angle east of the sun on Friday, which is the 7th. And that'll be your peak visibility for Mercury. And within a few days after that, you can see we've got a line here of Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, and Venus just disappeared below the horizon here a few moments ago. I'll just wind it back so you can pick up. There's Venus. So you need an unobstructed horizon to pick up Venus. And right around the 12th, 11th or 12th of the month or next week, we're going to get Mercury and Saturn within about 3.5 degrees of one another. So they'll be able to share a binocular's field of view. The other cool thing is going back to Venus here for a second. So Venus is in the process of sliding in between the Earth and the sun right now. So let me just bring this up so you can see him. Let's go back a couple of days here. And on around the 11th or 12th of the month, Venus will be at its inferior solar conjunction, but it'll also be the closest that any planet has been to Earth in 100 years. At that time, Venus is going to be 5 degrees north of the sun, north of the ecliptic. And so it is possible for the sun to be fully down, fully set, and be able to see Venus. It's a very tricky prospect to be able to look at it when it's in that position. We don't recommend people mess around too much when the sun is nearby with telescopes. But if you're a skilled observer and you're used to doing that kind of thing, that might be a curious thing that you can check out. All right, now for the bad news. The bad news is that after we lose, so let me just bring this down here. So each night we're losing, Mercury's going to start dropping sunward after its greatest elongation. Then we're going to get Saturn and Jupiter carried sunward a little bit every night. And by the time we get towards the end of January, we're basically closing the window on our telescope observing of Saturn and Jupiter. And within another couple of weeks, we'll basically lose them into the western twilight. And then unfortunately, that means no bright planets in the evening sky until Saturn returns, starts rising before midnight at the end of July, sort of the July-August timeframe. So if you've got a new telescope for Christmas, you're going to have to get really friendly with the moon for the first half of the year. Get out, get working on your Messier objects and learning some of your deep sky objects, your double stars and things like that, because it's going to be a while before we get the planets coming back. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the Stellarium bookmark tool. The bookmark tool is really handy. It's been taken off the latest versions of Stellarium, but if you wind back a couple of versions to previous one, you can use it. What I need to do is here, set this up and just start running through some of the events here. So here's that lunar X I was talking about. So it's going to be on Sunday night. The moon will be nice and high in the sky at the peak of the lunar X and then sort of descending into the west. Then in January 17th, we've got the smallest full moon of 2022. What I'll do is I'll just bring up the markings here to show you a ring around the moon. Here we go. So you can see there's an orange ring that I've got around the moon. It's not quite filling that ring. So that ring is 30 arc minutes in diameter. That's the typical size of the full moon. But because this one's a little bit happening near apogee, the moon's farthest distance from the Earth, then it's a little bit smaller. Then on March 19th, another lunar event to look forward to this year is the full moon occulting the star Porrima. That's in Virgo. I'll just wind back so you can get an idea of the context here. So that's the eastern sky. And this is going to happen around midnight, just sort of after midnight. And what's cool about Porrima is that it's a double star. And so you can actually watch the moon hover over each of the two stars, and then wait till the star reappears on the other side of the moon and see the two components of that double star wink into view. We have another occultation of another star. This is Dschubba. Dschubba is one of the claw stars of Scorpius. That's going to happen in April 19th. And again, if I just zoom in on Dschubba, you can see it is also a double star, and you can then perform the same sort of event again. And then we have one more event with Dschubba again, and that happens in the evening about 10 p.m. on June the 12th. So you can keep your eye out for that. All right, what else have we got here? We've got some supermoons coming up. So in June, we've got the largest, or one of the largest moons of the year. So now you can see that orange circle I was talking about is much smaller than the apparent diameter of the moon. So this full moon is happening near lunar perigee, when the moon is closer to the Earth, so it looms larger in the sky. But the absolute largest moon of the year will happen a month later in July. And this one is going to be just 1/10 of an arc minute bigger. So they're almost equal, but this one's just slightly edges out the other. All right. So let's talk about, and we've got a couple of occultations here. Let's see, we've got on October 24th, we've got the moon occulting the planet Mercury. This will be in daytime for us. So again, the sun will be in the sky. So you want to exercise very extreme caution. And the moon will be very young. So it'll be really tricky to see the moon without help. You're going to want to go to telescope or something aligned, previously in order to find these objects happening. But the best of all, I say for last in terms of the moon, and that's when Mars is at opposition in December this year. The full moon will occult Mars. So that's going to happen. This is the view from Toronto. So around 10:27 or so p.m., we'll get Mars disappearing behind the brighter leading edge of the moon, and then it'll reemerge. I think it's around an hour later. You can catch it coming out of the other side. So that'll be a really cool event. Hopefully we're able to get it together and have some public viewing and some star parties to celebrate something like that, especially when Mars is going to be so good at the end of the year. All right, let's talk a little bit about eclipses. We've got two sets of eclipses this year. We've got two total lunar eclipses. One and almost one of another is visible from Toronto. So we'll call that 1.5 visible from Toronto. And two partial solar eclipses that are not visible from Toronto. So let me bring these up for you. So we've got, let's see, partial solar eclipse is going to be visible from Chile, or the southern hemisphere. I'll just get rid of the horizon here so you can see how this will look. So this will be a deep partial eclipse. About 54% of the sun will get covered at maximum. But again, and that'll be for live stream, people that like to watch solar eclipses on live streams, those will be streamed in the afternoon hours for Toronto. So that's kind of a convenient time. And then 2 hours later, that's April 30th. 2 weeks later, because eclipses always happen in pairs, separated by 2 weeks, we have a total lunar eclipse visible from Toronto. So this view is from Toronto. And I'm just going to show you the Earth's shadow. So the eclipse will start around 10:30 p.m. The moon will be about, let's see here, about 16 degrees above the horizon, so not terribly high above the horizon. And then it'll proceed to dip into the Earth's shadow. It's a nice deep eclipse. You will notice towards the middle of the eclipse, the deepest part of the eclipse, that the sort of southern portion or the lower right portion of the moon will be less dark than the upper left portion of the moon. You're going to want to look for things like, let's see, I think some of the other deep sky objects may come into view once the moon becomes darkened during that eclipse. So that'll last beyond midnight. And by the time we get to the end of the eclipse, we'll be approaching 2 a.m. And unfortunately, the moon won't get much more than about 24 degrees above the horizon for any of that event. But it'll be a great one for everybody in Toronto to look at. Then we've got the next partial solar eclipse. That's going to be visible mainly in places like Svalbard in the far north. And that one's going to be on the 25th of October. And that'll be a live stream during the pre-dawn hours for us here in the city of Toronto. But then 2 weeks later, we get a total lunar eclipse again. And this lunar eclipse will be more favored by folks that live in the West Coast. So the people in Toronto and the eastern half of Canada will be able to see the early stages of this eclipse. This is going to be around here. This is a pre-dawn eclipse. And then by the time we get to the end of the eclipse, we'll have sunrise coming up. All right, so let's put these bookmarks away and we bring up my planet bookmarks. All right. So as I said, the evening sky is going to be devoid of planets, unfortunately. But let me get this back to this evening. Here we go. But we can start looking for some really cool, fun things happening in the pre-dawn sky. I mentioned that the elongation of Mercury is going to happen on Friday in January. The next good elongation of Mercury is going to happen in April. So let me just bring that one up here. So we've got one happening on April 29th. This one is going to be occurring with Mercury very close to the Pleiades. Now, of course, they'll be low in the sky. There'll be lots of air masses for us to look through, but your binoculars may be able to pick up some of the stars of the Pleiades for this elongation. So that'll be a cool one to look for. The next really good one is going to be in October, when we've got an excellent apparition of Mercury in October. So that's around early October, October 8th or so. Our best appearances for Venus this year. So Venus is disappearing from the evening sky, but it's going to be entering the morning sky before long. And it's going to be at its peak around March 20th or so. So this is March 20th, and it'll be near Mars and Saturn at that time. So let's look at the morning sky here. Let's come back a couple of weeks here, and we'll just sort of run through a little bit about what's going to happen in the morning sky. So once we get Venus in the morning sky, we've got Mars already there. So you can see Mars is sitting here, and I'll just center here on Mars. Then that sets up a sequence of really cool encounters. So by the time we get into early February or so, we're going to be having the planets Mercury, Venus, and Mars gathering together. Mars and Venus will actually be at their closest to one another on February 2nd, if you want to make a note of that. When we get to February 27th, then we've got a really pretty sight of Venus, Mars, and the old crescent moon parked above the southeastern horizon. So that'll be a fun one to look for. A couple of weeks later, we're going to get to March 14th, and that'll be the time when we have Venus closest to Mars plus Saturn in the view. Saturn will be coming up. And then head on a little bit further. Get to another photo op around the 23rd when we've got the moon coming into view here. And let me just wind back an hour or so and make this better. Put this here. And then we start getting some really neat photo ops and some close encounters. So here we go, advancing into early April. We've got Saturn and Mars telescope close to one another for a few mornings, depending on your sort of eyepiece field of view. You can fit them together. This is about a 30-degree or 30 arc minute field of view. So your telescope will be a little bit bigger than this, a bit healthier than that. So for several days, they'll be visible together in the telescope together. Let me wind this back. And then as we head forward, then we're going to have Jupiter coming into view. And by the time we get to around April 30th, then we're going to have Jupiter and Venus encountering each other telescope close. That's around the April 30th to May 1st, sort of the pre-dawn. And then finally on, just pick up Jupiter here and wind forward a little bit more. Again, if you don't mind setting the alarm, then we're going to get Jupiter and Mars telescope close themselves at the end of May, May 29th. So those are some great opportunities for you to catch some objects together. In terms of meteor showers, so everybody looks forward to the meteor showers every year, and we have a sort of a boo-hoo or woo-hoo scenario coming up in terms of meteor showers. So the first meteor shower of the year that we usually look forward to here is the April Lyrids meteor shower. So let's find the Lyrids here. Here we go. So the meteor shower is best before dawn when the sky overhead is heading into the debris field that's producing the shower. Unfortunately, there'll be a waning gibbous moon in the sky during the peak of the shower, so that's not going to be a great opportunity for us. Then on May 5th, 6th, we have the Eta Aquarids meteor shower, and this one here's the radiant here. This one's going to be a much better opportunity. We'll have the crescent moon will set after about 1 a.m., leaving the pre-dawn sky nice and dark for meteors. Then on July 29th, we've got the Southern Delta Aquarids meteor shower. This one here. Where are we here? Oh, over here. There we go. This one's going to be a good one. There'll be good moon conditions, so moonless skies, but this shower typically only produces about 20 meteors at the peak. Everybody looks forward to the Perseid meteor shower every year. Unfortunately, the Perseid meteor shower, which peaks around August 12th, 13th, that's going to be a full moon. So that one's not going to be a good shower for us this year. Next good shower for us in 2022 is in October. That's the Orionids. Again, that's only about a couple of dozen meteors per hour at the peak, but that will be a fairly moonless sky, so that's one you can look for. And by the way, in terms of the Perseid meteor shower, even though there'll be a full moon on the peak night, my recommendation would be to head out a few nights earlier, and you can actually catch the sky before the moon is bothering you too much, so you can get some of those meteors. Finally, I'm just going to close with a couple of comets. Now, of course, we had our comet Leonard, which has actually panned out well for people in the southern hemisphere, but hasn't turned out too well for us in the north. But we don't know what comet might be discovered between now and the end of the year, but we do know that a couple of old returning comets are expected to get reasonably bright near perigee when they're closest to the Earth. So comet C2017 K2 Pan-STARRS is predicted to reach magnitude 6 when it's at perigee around July 6th or so. And that'll be nicely positioned in the evening sky in the center of Ophiuchus. And then a little bit earlier than that, we've got comet C2021-03 Pan-STARRS, which will reach perigee around May 7th. That'll be after its perihelion. And so it'll join the sky. It won't be visible for long. You can see that once the sunset comes down, we've only got a brief opportunity to take a look. So that's basically it for astronomy. Of course, we're looking forward to James Webb Science coming up in this year. The Vera Rubin Observatory is scheduled to have first light sometime in 2022. So fingers crossed that we have a good year with lots of clear skies.
Thank you very much, Chris. Lots of good stuff to look forward in 2022. Emma, do we have any questions for Chris?
We do. First of all, we have a viewer from southeastern Brazil. Will the lunar eclipse in Chile be visible in that part of Brazil too?
No, I don't think so. Let me see if I can bring up the map for the eclipse. Okay, open hyperlink. So if you go to eclipsewise.com, you can look up the different eclipses and you can get the visibility maps. So the eclipse that we get on May 22nd, May 16th, 2022, yes, it will be visible in the southern hemisphere.
Thank you. Does Dial-A-Moon show lunar libration for particular times accurately?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so it'll rotate the moon to give us the view as seen from Earth at any hour of the year.
Perfect.
And not only that, but it actually has videos where it'll actually run through the libration in the different phases of the year. So it's a great page to explore.
Cool. Thank you. That's all the questions.
Thank you, Emma. I just have a quick comment or question for Chris. In terms of lunar eclipses, we hear the term blood moon being used so much, especially in the media, and it's driving me crazy. Am I the only one, or, I mean, blood moon really doesn't mean anything, right?
Well, it's dramatic, so it drives clicks. It drives, it gets a little buzz going. Really, it's sunset colored moon, isn't it? I mean, that's what's causing the red color, is the fact that any light that gets to the full moon during eclipse is coming over the Earth's horizon, where it's typically reddened by the sort of sunset colors that we get.
Right.
So
it's a media phenomenon, pop culture thing.
Super moon, blood moon.
Yeah. All right, very good. Thanks again, Chris, for doing the sky this year. That was a great idea.
No problem.
Okay, let's move on to our next speaker, and that's Claudio Oriani, and he'll tell us about automating a telescope with Remote Desktop and N.I.N.A. Take it away, Claudio.
Thank you, Paul, for having me tonight. And Happy New Year, everyone, from Richmond Hill. By the way, I'm walking distance to the David Dunlap Observatory. Tonight, I want to talk about how I automated my astro imaging sessions with a dedicated computer, Remote Desktop, and N.I.N.A. I will talk about my requirements and limitations and the solution that works for me. Then I will run a demo to show you what you can achieve with N.I.N.A, which is my preferred astrophotography software, its advanced sequencer, and a few plugins. Finally, I will share some images I capture during my remote sessions and will answer your questions. Let's start. It's pretty cold outside, so we know that the average low temperature in January in Toronto is -7, while February is -6. So I don't want to be out in the cold while my telescope is imaging. I also want to plan my imaging sessions well in advance. This way I can optimize the precious imaging time when I find some rare clear nights, in Toronto. I also want a software that can help me log in my observation, for example, by automatically saving the target name, the camera filter, telescope, exposure time, and so on. I also want to receive real-time notifications. So I want to be notified on the progress of my imaging sessions and be notified if something goes wrong. I also want to see and share my images in real time for outreach purposes or science data. And last but not least, I'm lazy. I don't want to learn a new program since I find that N.I.N.A is working very well with my one-shot camera or astrophotography tool if I'm using my DSLR camera. Also have AutoStacker, SharkUp, Registax for planetary imaging. So the shortlist, let me decide one of the three options I had, the ACII Plus, Stellarium Plus, or a mini PC and a Wi-Fi extender. ACII Plus, its cost probably is around $400 or so here. And it's amazing. It's dedicated smart Wi-Fi controller for your telescope, imaging rigs, and mount filters, everything. There are some but. So the previous version were also known to have problems with the Wi-Fi in terms of antenna reception and so on. Also, there are some missing features. So like a more flexible port alignment, filter management, sequencer. But above all, if you want to use a different camera other than a ZWO, you can't. So one reason to exclude the ACI Air Plus was that I'm using a focuser that is a Celestron also in terms of the mount. Another option was Stellarium, also a very good option. It's based on the library named InDelib, and it runs on Windows, Mac OS, Linux. The Pro version, you also have some additional features like a polar alignment assistant, live video, cloud storage, and so on. But you have to pay a subscription that is around $4.99 per month. And then my preferred solution, I will explain you why in a few seconds, is a mini PC and a Wi-Fi extender. As I said before, I have an old Celestron CG5 mount. There are some compatibilities issue with the Stellarium. I think that right now they've been solved. In the past, I used to freeze windy libraries. And in terms of ACI Plus, as I say, I don't want to be locked on the ZWO cameras. So this is my solution. A mini PC with Windows 10 Pro and Remote Desktop. In my case, last year I purchased a Beelink Gemini T34. A Wi-Fi extender is a high-gain antenna that is running both of 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. An astrophotography imaging suite I already know is N.I.N.A. This is free. And the notification system in place. Name is IFTTT. The name means if this, then that. I will tell you more in a few seconds. And I also want to share my astro images while they are taken. So this is happening real time with a N.I.N.A plugin named Lightbucket. This is my mini PC. As I said before, it's very versatile. And the thing I really love about this PC that is very, very lightweight. So it's less than 1 kilogram. I added this high-gain USB Wi-Fi adapter. And I paid like $25 on Amazon. And this is what my gear looks like. So the Beelink is connected to the accessory tray through a Velcro strap. And I'm using my CG5 mount with apochromatic refractor. This is my sweet spot. In terms of drivers, there is an ASCOM platform, of course, to guide the mount, the focuser, and everything else. The camera drivers, the mount, focuser, filter, wheels, controls, if you have any, and the polar scope drivers, if any, QHI Pole Master in my case. A note about the N.I.N.A and the DSLR camera. The documentation indicates that N.I.N.A supports Canon and Nikon DSLR, but I would suggest to try your camera before, because maybe your model is not completely working with N.I.N.A. Then the mini PC software I installed on my computer. So Stellarium, and it's very useful because it can communicate with N.I.N.A, and basically you can pass the AR and the declination of solar system minor bodies. Let's say, for example, the comet Leonard. I took some pictures a few weeks ago, asteroid and so on. Of course, N.I.N.A, and for plate solving, you also want to use, in my case, ASTAP, an ASTAP database. You can download the stars until magnitude 17 or 18, depends. 18, of course, is more powerful, but you also require more space on your hard drive. Fire capture for planetary imaging, if you're doing any. SharpCap a PhD 2 for auto guiding. A few notes in terms of the configuration. So first, you want to disable Windows Update. You don't want Windows Update to run outside the working hours. So typically, you're using your mini PC nighttime. And also Wi-Fi always on. So not power saving option, because you don't want to lose the network connectivity while you're imaging. Another thing, I found that in my experience, a 6 GB RAM are more than enough to guide plate solver imaging. Maybe for the live view or planetary imaging, you would like to require more gigabytes of RAM, let's say 8. And in terms of N.I.N.A, so first of all, if you want to use the advanced sequencer, you want to download the beta version of N.I.N.A. And 3 particularly useful plugins I'm using: 3-point polar alignment. You will see that really is a game changer for me. Works almost anywhere in the sky. You don't need to have a view the Polaris. So by the way, I'm no longer using the Pole Master, because I found that the 3-point polar alignment is very accurate. Ground station, it sends failure events and freeform messages to a variety of messaging automation services. In my case, I decided to use if this then that webhooks. I will show you in a few minutes. And Focus Focus is improving the autofocus procedure for N.I.N.A. And another beautiful plugin I found that is very, very interesting is Light Bucket. So what happened with Light Bucket? You're just sending information about your session while you're imaging. So you can just save the target name, the rotation of your telescope name from your file, the camera name, image filter, duration of your sequence, binning, and also total RMS in arc second. And above all, a small 300 pixel thumbnail of your stretched frame. I will show you in a while. There are other interesting plugins. I don't want to talk too much about them tonight. But for example, there is PixInsight tools for those who are using PixInsight. Typically, you already have a master dark, a master base, and a flat frame. So what this plugin is doing is just stacking and calibrating images on the fly while you're taking images. Of course, you need enough processing power to interact with PixInsight in parallel to imaging. And another plugin I never used so far, but I'd like to have a try, is the exoplanet plugin. So basically, it retrieves a list of exoplanets. You can just plan your imaging session, and you can just take a picture before, during, and after the transit to create the light curve. But now let's go to the demo time. I will try not to talk too much over the video, but at the end of the demo, I will take questions for sure. adding all my camera, telescope. In my case, I'm using a Aspen Simulator driver, and this also to trigger an error during my presentation. I can use the guiders of PhD2, and I can also tell N.I.N.A through PhD2 to tether every number of frames. This is something I particularly like. You can even connect N.I.N.A to a weather station, so you can basically be notified that rain is coming. If you have a dome, I don't, you can tell N.I.N.A to close the dome before the rain is coming. Then you want to plan your imaging session. Let's say Orion Nebula. The rectangle is telling you what is the field of your camera. If you're not happy with the setting, you can also recenter the image, just moving the rectangle and click recenter the image, or even create a mosaic, let's say 3 rows for 3 columns. And when you're happy, you add your image to your advanced sequencer. In this case, I just want to open an advanced sequence already saved in the past. I will edit the sequence to meet my needs, lodge sequence, and will assess the result. Let's see. I click the open button, the load. Taking a while to load on this computer. And you have the global trigger that is just checking for errors. Then the sequence startup plus the capture target, the main imaging sequence. There are instructions you can add or remove very easily with the drag and drop. I will show you. For example, I want to wait for time. The ideal solution is to wait until your target, let's say M42, is higher in the sky, let's say 30 degrees. And you just add instructions, drag and drop, and remove distraction by clicking the bin button. And when you're happy, you just press the play button. Before doing that, I want to go back to the plugins I installed. So if you click to the plugin button, to the left here, these are the plugins I installed on my mini PC. Checkmark telling you that these are the plugins I installed. So ground station to send notification. There are different services available. I decide to use if is then that. Focus for the autofocus routine. Light bucket, I will show you in a while what is going to happen with light bucket. And this is really my favorite one. I have less than 1 arc-minute polar alignment error in 10 minutes. Now, let's start. It's executing the instructions. So this is what I'm expecting. One exposure 5 seconds of the Orion Nebula, 2 email notifications for the imaging session started and ended, email notifications for error, if any. And we do have 1 error. This is the first email I got. This is the second email I got. And finally, this is the imaging session completed. Plus an error as I said before, because my simulated camera doesn't have any cooler. Let's switch to light bucket. What happened behind the scenes is that my images were uploaded on this server with all the information related to my telescope and this real image I took in November. So this is my simulation. And you can see the filter, sequence, number of exposures, and so on. If you click, you can go and see the details. But now let's go back to see some images I captured on the night of November 24. A few minutes exposure, multiple exposure. So the Horsehead and Flame Nebula, the Orion Nebula, the Monkey Head Nebula, and Pleiades, all from my couch. This was just amazing. And I don't know if you have any questions, but that's all for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Claudio. That's a great presentation. Thank you for bringing all those applications to our attention. I had never heard of N.I.N.A. Looks like it's a full-featured package. I will definitely give it a try.
Absolutely, it is for free.
Exactly. Yeah, that's amazing. Emma, do we have any questions for Claudio?
We do have a couple of questions. First of all, have you tried to absorb the James Webb with a telescope?
No, I had not a chance, and above all because it was very cloudy. It was going through the Orion constellation a few days ago, but we had only clouds, so no chance for me.
Oh, that's too bad, but maybe soon. Second question, with this system, is there a way to allow remote control of your telescope? Like, for example, having a friend in another country have access?
Yes, it is possible. You have to create a VPN. I don't want to go too much in detail, but there are some tutorials available. You can, by the way, also put the telescope somewhere else and you can use mini router to control your telescope. Let's say you have a dark place when you can leave your telescope, let's say Northern Ontario, and you can just open the dome from your house here. So yes, it's possible.
Cool. Thank you so much. That's all the questions.
Thank you very much. And back to you, Paul.
Great. Thanks, Claudia. Let's move on to our third speaker, Manu Mukerji, and he'll tell us about his journey into astrophotography. Go ahead, Manu.
Hello, Happy New Year, everybody. My name is Manu, and I'm coming to you from Toronto, Ontario, just on the border of Toronto and Scarborough. So fairly like polluted backyard skies. I just wanted to present how I ended up in this deep rabbit hole called astrophotography. So, I'm Manu. I'm very socially awkward, and I'm fascinated by shiny things. And now, foolishly thought that the pandemic was coming to an end, so I shaved off my pandemic beard. What do I like to do? I like taking pictures, mostly landscapes, sometimes buildings, but almost never people, other than my family. So what got me into astrophotography? The short answer is YouTube. Just started watching tons of videos of people doing these amazing travel vlogs of going to distant places, looking at the Milky Way core. I'm like, wow, is that something I can do? The short answer I'll get to in a second. The longer explanation is I was always interested in stars, but my early experiments, as I mentioned, were a bit underwhelming. Also, I mean, tying back to what Claudia was mentioning in the previous presentation, time or lack thereof. There is something to be said about sitting in your couch and having your telescope be operated remotely, as opposed to actually going out, setting up in the middle of the night in an unknown location. It's a bit too much. Also, this hobby is not cheap. So I did what most people do when they start into it. I gave up. But then 2020 happened. Found myself stuck at home. My kids and my wife suddenly were not that interested in me sticking a camera in their faces every few minutes. Surprisingly, the dogs were very unconcerned when I started doing that. So I started pointing the camera up at the skies from my backyard. As I mentioned, I'm in a Bortle 7 zone, so it's fairly light polluted. And with my naked eye, I could maybe catch 5 stars in major constellations like Orion, maybe. But the camera sensor was just amazing. Suddenly I started catching photons that had been traveling millions of light years, and I had no idea I could even do that from my own backyard. So I started going down the rabbit hole. I started to research how to take better pictures with my existing equipment. I started to play with Photoshop, Deep Sky Stacker, Sequator, and then a comet appeared. This was Comet Neowise from fairly close to here, in just north of Markham. I managed to find a golf course, and I just set up the camera and just started taking pictures. And because I was cooped up and Ontario started opening up a little bit in the summer, I went on a camping trip, and by pure luck, managed to capture the wide field image of the Milky Way core. I was very excited, but this was it. I'd made it. I was an astrophotographer. I've done it. There's nothing else nothing else to learn. This I could probably sell all of this equipment and images. I could make literally dozens of dollars back. No. I started, as I mentioned, started going deeper into the rabbit hole and started looking at deep sky imaging. And again, YouTube is a very conducive to going down this rabbit hole. So I did what almost every beginner does: is I pointed a camera lens and a DSLR to Orion. And this was my first attempt. This was my first attempt at capturing anything outside of the moon or landscape with the night sky showing. And I was blown away. I could see a nebula from a backyard in a light polluted city. But then what else could I do? Well, this was with a 200 millimeter lens. So I said, okay, what if I plonk on a bigger lens on there? What happens then? I started getting closer, but I also noticed that if I kept the exposure long, everything quickly fell apart. So I started taking shorter exposures, but had no idea what I was doing still. But a little bit of improvement. I started seeing it a bit bigger and screaming, okay, what else can I do? So this was shot in December of last year. And between the previous image and this one, I discovered the wonderful world of equatorial mounts. And I went out and bought myself a small refractor telescope. After having to figure out what back focus was, how to mount it, how to control it, I managed to take this image of the Orion Nebula. And I was really stunned. This was the proper taste of what could be done. Now, this was taken with no light pollution filters. This was just between the previous image and this image. I had to teach myself what stacking was, how you can stretch an image, but I still hadn't gone further deeper into the hole. And then this was last month, October of, not last month, a couple of months ago actually now. And I just wanted to compare within 1 year, had I made any improvements in this hobby? And suddenly there was visual proof that I had made improvements within a year that I did not think I was making when I was reprocessing the same images over and over again. And am I still doing this? Yeah, I love this target. It is genuinely a fun target to shoot. It's very easy to find. At this point in time, I've sold the used mount that I got a second mount, got a dedicated astronomy camera, put a light pollution filter in there, guiding ASI Air Pro to acquire the images, and then PixInsight to edit. So it quickly went. The learning curve was steep, but the rewards were quite lovely to look at. So what was this trip like? Well, as I mentioned, I started with a basic tripod and an intervalometer. I was learning about star trails and stacking. I wanted to do that the nightscape with the foreground with the Earth spinning around the northern celestial pole. Then I'm like, okay, well, I want to capture the white field. So can I do long exposure? But you can, but you can't do it too long, or else you get star trails, which is what I'm trying to avoid now. So, okay, I tried to learn stacking, what that meant, and how it was different, similar to what I'd learned with star trails, but also different somehow. Then that led into the next period where it was long exposures with a star tracker, learning stacking and blending two different images, one for the foreground and one for the background. And then it started, the drop-off started to happen steeply. Long exposure with an equatorial mount, figuring out acquisition software. Again, there's a very clear memory in my brain of in February of last year where nothing was working. Everything that could break was breaking. My fingers were frozen, my toes were frozen. I had this vivid image of just taking everything, just tossing it into the bin and just saying, I'm done with this hobby. I also learned a lot of new words. Acquisition software itself is one of them. So after I threw my tantrum, I had to learn PixInsight, which is a very powerful astro editing software, effectively. And I don't know if you've ever used it, but it is incredibly intimidating and completely non-intuitive. So following my previous trend, I gave up on it almost immediately. I then started taking long exposures with a dedicated astronomy camera, and quickly discovered that if I wanted to do this, I had to kind of give up any hopes, dreams, aspirations I had of ever seeing anybody outside of my family in the evening time, and then had to go crawling back to PixInsight and had to keep learning. But here's the thing, it's a very isolating hobby. As I mentioned, I shoot from my backyard. I had no idea where to go. And by complete happenstance, I stumbled across Rask and Rask Toronto Center's Instagram pages. And after dithering for about 1 month, I joined the society and finally started breathing, because I realized I wasn't the only person who was spending countless evenings, every clear evening outside, just looking up at the stars. So what's next for me? What's next in 2022? So I'm hoping in the spring to attempt a wide field Milky Way panorama, something I've never done. Hoping that that things get better and we can start meeting again, so we can get out there during during the star party and actually complete a panorama. And in the summer, I want to capture more data on the North American nebula. I want to create a mosaic of Perkin Solar Nebula, and I want to, hopefully, if everything works out well, to try and make more trips out to the observatory. I think that's it for me. I am hoping that this was a little bit entertaining and informative, and I just want to say, if there are any questions, happy to take them. But if not, over to you, Paul.
Great. Thank you so much, Manu, for sharing your experiences with us so far. And hopefully we'll have you back in a few months. You can show us some more results.
Love to.
Emma, do we have any questions for Manu?
We didn't get any questions, but we got one joke. What happened to all your money? And the response is, astrophotography ate it.
There was another joke that I heard, which is how to make sure your kids never get into drugs. It's easy, just get them into astrophotography. They'll have no money.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Manu, I have a question. I may have missed it. Where are you shooting from?
I'm shooting from my backyard in Scarborough, Toronto, Scarborough, Ontario.
Yeah, in the thick of light pollution, unfortunately, just like most of us.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thanks again, Manu.
We actually got a question.
Oh, okay.
What camera did you start with, and what do you have now?
Oh, I started with a Nikon D780. Sure, that's not true. I started with a Nikon D750, but I sold that because I bought the Nikon D780, and then I moved to a one-shot color dedicated astronomy camera, the ZWO ASI 533 MC Pro. These names are just roll off the tongue, but that's my current camera that I'm shooting with.
Great, thank you so much.
Very good. So that concludes the speakers for this evening. We actually ran a lot faster than expected. Let's go to our president, Tom Luton, with the announcements for this evening.
Thank you very much, Paul. And it's actually a good thing that we're running a little faster this evening, because we've got I've got a few things to talk about this evening. So hope you're all doing well, and let's get into the announcements. So the big thing I've got to talk about tonight is to announce the RASC Toronto Centre Awards. And first of all, I have to apologize. I was supposed to do this at the last meeting. I actually made the slides, but I forgot to put them in the presentation. And you might notice, if you go back, you'll notice into the previous meeting, there's a moment where I realize I've goofed and left the slides out. So I apologize profusely. This was supposed to be done last time, so we're doing it now. All right, so Toronto Centre, we have a number of awards that go out to our members, and going through them, we've got the Charlene Nordgrove Award for Outstanding Contributions to the Toronto Centre. So it's presented annually to up to 3 members who have made one or more of the following significant contributions to the RASC Toronto Centre. Either they've successfully communicated astronomy concepts to the general public by volunteering to assist in any capacity as needed at Toronto Centre outreach events by welcoming guests, answering their questions, and sharing information about the Toronto Centre. Or they have inspired and encouraged new members to develop their interest in astronomy by welcoming them to members and events, offering helpful advice and or technical guidance about equipment, and generally making them feel part of the astronomy community. And they have encouraged and supported ongoing learning among members by preparing and offering presentations at recreational astronomy night meetings, and or taking a leadership role in planning and implementing new ideas that benefit members. So this year we have 2 winners of the Charlene Nordgrove Award, Grace Horvatin and Paul Markov. Grace Horvatin, this is in recognition of your over 20 years of contributions to education and public outreach at Hyde Park and at the CAO, and as well for your hard work in planning award picnics and CAO open houses. Paul, this is in recognition of your many years as host of our Recreational Astronomy Nights in person at the Science Center and at other locations and here online. So next up is the Andrew Elvins Award for Promotion of Astronomy. This award is for members whose efforts have contributed significantly to the promotion of interest in astronomy and the society among the general public. This year, the winner is Denise Chilton, in recognition for her long hours as head of the DDO committee, coordinating DDO presentations, affairs and operations behind the scenes. And as someone who has helped out a little bit with the DDO, coordinating the recent move of items out of the office so that the floor can be worked on, and then moving everything back in. And Denise was responsible for coordinating all of that, and among many other things. Next up is a Bertram J. Topham Award for Observing. This goes to members who have made significant contributions to the observing activities of the center, or who have carried out observing programs of a significant and well-defined nature. This year's winner is Frank Dempsey. In recognition of his work as one of the Toronto Centre's most accomplished observers, in 2021, he finished his observations for the Messier certificate and is almost done with the Finest NGC list and the Double Star program. He's also completed the Astronomical League's Open Cluster program by taking advantage of work at home due to the pandemic. And he's continuing on with the Isabel Williamson Lunar Certificate and the Herschel 400 program from the Astronomical League. And he's thinking of keeping going with the Deep Sky Gems and Deep Sky Challenge lists. Congratulations, Frank. Next is the Ray Thompson Award for Astronomical Imaging. This is presented to the member or members who have done exceptional work in astroimaging, including CCD, film, sketching, and other techniques. The winner is Charles Young, in recognition for his enthusiastic pursuit of camera modification and excellent imagery that he's been sharing on the forum. He's a very frequent contributor in answering other imagers' queries and providing detailed advice to his fellow members. The Ostrander Ramsey Award for Astronomical Writing. This award is made at the discretion of the editor of Scope. Winner is Dan Falk, in recognition of his recently published articles. The cover article, Fraught Frontier, about satellite mega constellations in Sky News in July 2020. His article, How Galileo Blended Science and Art in Astronomy Magazine in November 2020. And it's not the first article that he's written for astronomy. And as well, his article, The Search for Another Earth, about Sarah Seeger in the University of Toronto magazine in September 2021. Last but not least is the H.A. Winnerls Award for Service, sometimes called the President's Award. This award is to recognize exceptional service to the center, and it's made at the discretion of the president. And this year's winner is Paul Delaney, in recognition of his many years as our vice president of programming. In those years, Paul has provided us with dozens of speakers covering all facets of astronomy at our speaker nights, and on occasion has stepped in to make his own presentations. As well, Paul was instrumental in finding us meeting space during our year in the wilderness, those several months a few years ago in which we were basically homeless and trying to find a new meeting location. That concludes our list of Toronto Centre Awards for this year. I'd like to thank all of our winners, and I'd like to thank the committee for their hard work in putting this wonderful list together. And please join me in congratulating all of the winners. So moving on to what would be our little more normal of our announcement section, I'd like to welcome everyone. As Paul mentioned, we've got two types of meetings. We have our Recreational Astronomy Night, and we have our Speakers Night. Both of them are here live on YouTube. We've got a chat box. If you're here for the first time, please say hello. Please enter questions for presenters. If you're a new member, please introduce yourself. And if you're coming from far, far away and joining us through the magic of the internet, please let us know where in the world you're joining us from. So our next speakers night is on the 19th of January at 7:30 right here on YouTube. Sana Winters from York University will be discussing high redshift galaxies and the early universe. Our next Recreational Astronomy Night meeting is on the 2nd of February at 7:30 p.m. Andy Beaton will be doing the sky this month. Michael Cook will be discussing relocating and expanding Newcastle Observatory. And Krishna Vadela will be discussing Astronomy Logbook, a 21st Century Stargazer's Pocketbook. Here live on YouTube, and as Paul pointed out earlier, if you'd like to contribute something, if you'd like to present something, please drop Paul a note and we'll fit you in. Coming up the DDO in the next few weeks, on Saturday the 15th of January at 7 p.m., we have Up in the Sky, $12.50 registration fee. Links can be found at raskto.ca. We have Ask an Astronomer with Chris Vaughan, who you might remember from a certain presentation about an hour ago. January 16th, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., $5.65 fee. Registration links can be found at raskto.ca. Sunday stargazing at the DDO on Saturday, January 23rd, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. $6.78 registration fee. Again, links at raskto.ca. We've mentioned observing certificates. Just going to quickly plug that if you've been working as a result of some of the dark nights we've had, and a few holes in the clouds, if you've got your observing certificate nearly done, let us know so that we can get your certificate and PIN processed for you. And if not, I'd like to introduce you to the program. We've got several observing certificates available. Explore the Universe, Explore the Moon with binoculars or telescopes, Messier Catalog, Finest New General Catalog Objects, Double Stars, the Isabel Williamson Lunar Certificate, Deep Sky Gems, and Deep Skies Challenge. More information can be found at www.rask.ca/certificate-programs. Education and public outreach activities are continuing. We have and are planning virtual star parties and EPO talks with a number of different groups and at a number of different locations, COVID permitting. We have done work with Ontario Science Centre, Millennium Square, and the David Dunlop Observatory, and many, many other places and groups. If you'd like us to come talk to your group, please contact public education at raskto.ca. To the surprise of absolutely no one, observing sessions are still suspended until further notice. So we are not having any of our RASC star parties at the Bayview Village Park, at Long Sault Conservation Area, or at the Ontario Science Centre. The Car Astronomical Observatory, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, the road is snowed in. Access to CAO facilities by members' families are only available in a non-communal fashion, with a total site occupancy limited to 10 bookings and up to 25 individuals. At this time of year, camping and access via RVs is not really an option, so it's limited at this point to one member or family upstairs in the house. Full details are available on the website in the booking section. Please read everything before you make your booking, with the note that the SLU Observatory is open, the GBO is closed. And this is the part where I get to plug membership in the RASC, and a reminder to renew if you haven't done so recently. You can do so online at secure.rasc.ca. If COVID has thrown your finances for a loop, we do have a RASC emergency fund, completely confidential. Details are at MEM for additional details, or to purchase a gift membership for someone else. Contact the national office at mempub@rasc.ca. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this evening. Please follow us on all the various forms of social media as listed here. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell on YouTube. Stay safe, keep looking up, and have a good night. Take care.